Lysistrata is in your book. It's on page 784. And you are reading stories that came from the 5th century BCE. Now, what do we know about the role of women during that time? They were possessions. They were pretty much objectified. They were viewed as they weren't valued except for being able to provide whatever for men, children, home, sex, whatever. And we know that there were actually 4, but we're looking at 3 playwrights during this time. Do you remember from our sheet and our research on Monday who they were? You got your sheet so you can look at it. Who were those 3 playwrights? Aristophanes is one of them, and he is the author of Lysistrata. Who were the other 2? Euripides, he's the author of Medea. Sophocles, and he's the author of Oedipus, which we're going to be reading on Monday. And these playwrights wrote drama and comedy, and that originated in the Greek theater. And we know that during the 5th century BCE, one of the developments during that time was in the arts. And Lysistrata is one of the few remaining comedies from that period. Now, the stories that we're going to be, or the plays that we're going to be talking about today, Lysistrata and Medea, are both named after women, and they both have the main characters as female. Now, during the time of the Greek theater, only men could act in these plays. So men acted out the parts of the women in both Lysistrata and Medea. So we're going to be trying to figure out today why these authors used women when women were not valued at all. We've already seen from the Iliad that there was a war over a woman, and there was also a huge argument between Achilles and Agamemnon over a woman. Okay, that kind of is contrary to this concept of women are not valued. So Aristophanes wrote this play with a goal in mind. What was his goal, you think? Yes, he wanted to end the war. So he used women to accomplish that goal. Why do you reckon? All right, so our main character, Lysistrata, at the beginning of the play has called all the women together. What does she want them to do? Go on a sex strike. Why? To end the war. She said, okay, if all of us do this, then the men will come to their senses and end the war. How did the women respond? No, they left. They walked away. They said, we're not participating in this. And she said, look, this is our only weapon. This is the only thing that we could do. So they united and decided to do that. And they holed up at the Acropolis. And what do we know about the Acropolis? From our sheet on Monday. What was the Acropolis? I hear 2 different things. It was a sacred place. It was also, it was on that part of the land that was protected. So it was like a safe place. And it's also where some of the government proceedings took place. So it's a very important place, and the women were holed up there. And on page 798, Lysistrata says, keeping the money here will starve the war to death. So, what are the resources that war uses? What does war use? What are the resources that war uses? I just named one of them. Money. Yeah, money. War costs a lot of money. What else? Okay. What else? What else does war cost? What resources? Money, and what else? Okay. Okay. What's the highest cost of war? Yeah, it costs lives. So it's a serious, very serious concept, and Aristophanes is making light of it in this play, but he's really not. So the officers go to arrest Lysistrata and all the women, and the first time they come, they open the door, and the women meet them with a chamber pot. You know what a chamber pot is? Toilet? Yeah. So the cops leave. They say, we don't want her to throw that on us. So then they send another policeman, and the women meet him with these huge tongs aimed at a strategic part of his body. And he says, I'm not me, and he leaves. And then on page 801, we see where the police chief, or the counselor they're calling him in this translation, comes, and he says, okay, Lysistrata, I want to know what you would do if you were in control. And she gives him, you might want to write this down, a metaphor of wool. Okay, what is a metaphor? Bless you if you want to be blessed. What does that term mean, metaphor? I know you had this in high school. It is a comparison without using like or as. So she's comparing what she would do to straighten out the government to something that they're all familiar with, getting wool off a sheep. So she says, first give the fleece a bath to dunk away the sheep dung. So what's the first thing Lysistrata says they should do in government? Get rid of what? Crap. Get rid of all crap. Then she said, spread your city on a bed next and beat out all the layabouts and briars. Then card out any clumps. You know, the cliques of chumps, magistry mongers, pluck their heads off. So what's she saying they need to do in government? Clean out the junk. What else? Get rid of who? Yeah, people who aren't contributing anything. And people who are making themselves fat off the people who are getting rich off the government. Comb what's left into a single goodwill basket. Wad in your resident aliens and other nice foreigners, and don't leave out public debtors. And heck, as far as the city's scattered colonies, I want to construe them as neglected toughs, each on his lonesome. Gather them all together. And finally, you'll have one big ball. Use it to weave the city something fine. So clean up all the corruption. Get rid of all the people who aren't contributing anything and the people who are enriching themselves, and weave in all the foreigners and the, what else does she say? Scattered colonies. Who does she leave out here? Who's not included? What specific group is not included here? She's one of them. Yeah. She's not including women because the writer of this story is a man, and he's using her to make a point. So she's used this metaphor of wool to say this is what we should do to make ourselves strong. And he said, well, war's the work of women, and she says no. Women have to deal with war. And what does she mean by that? Women didn't fight. What did women have to deal with? Yes, the loss of husbands, sons, fathers, brothers. They tend to lose a great deal from war. So there's this really comical scene about Canisius, I believe, and what was her name? Marini, her husband. he comes to her and she kind of sort of teases him, and she's holding the baby, and she said, well, I can't have sex with you because I've got the baby. And he takes the baby and throws the baby to somebody else and says, somebody else take this baby. But she runs in at the last minute, slams the door. So finally he says, okay, I can't take any more. Let's end this war. And on page 815, the very bottom of the page, Lysistrata says, I am a woman, but I have a mind. What does that mean? What does she mean there? I'm a woman, so what do they think of women?
I don't think they're much.
Yeah, not very smart. But what does Lysistrata recognize?
For herself.
What?
She can think for herself.
What is she thinking about, though? What is she specifically pointing out to them? She had a sex strike, so they do what? Why? Why does she want them to end the war?
So they go home and be with them. So they can actually spend time with them instead of being at war and fighting and dying.
Okay, and what does war cost?
With their lives.
Yeah, it costs the lives and it costs money. So, if a woman can see that, who should be able to see it? Who else should be able to see it? Yeah. So, that is pretty much why Aristophanes used a woman as the main character here. Because how are women viewed? They're not very smart and they're property. But if they recognize that war is bad, then what? If they're not smart and they can recognize it, then surely... Exactly. So his goal is to stop the war here. And his theme here is that lowly women recognize it. So, of course, you smart men should be able to. All right, do you have any questions about Aristophanes and Lysistrata? All right, let's look at Medea. Medea starts on page 745. Now, Euripides was not valued very much by his fellow writers. Medea has come to be one of the most performed and read plays from this era. His peers, though, thought, he's really not much of a writer. He's sort of soap opera-ish and melodramatic. He looks at the dark side of people. And I told you the scene about the coat that was melting. A lot of them said that was sort of melodramatic. But he is a voice. He was a voice for two groups of people. Well, actually one overall group, the oppressed. What does that mean? What does that word mean, oppressed? When someone is oppressed, what does that mean? Pretty much have no rights at all. So he is speaking for people in the society that had no rights. Women, slaves, and foreigners. And he's using his voice to speak to them through this play. So we're going to answer questions from Medea. You're going to work in your groups, and you've got, let's see how many we got here. 7. And the first one, this Deus Ex Machina, you do not have to answer that. I will answer that. But each group will be responsible for answering one of these questions out loud. You have to answer all of them as a group, but you'll be responsible for one of them when we go over them, except for the Deus Ex Machina. And I'll come around and tell you which one you're going to be answering. So you've got, let's say, 15 minutes to complete this, and then we'll talk about them. All right, let's look at this story. I'm going to give you a little bit of information about some of the background of this story. There was this guy named Jason, and his father was the king, and his brother came in and sort of took over. So his father sent his boy away so his brother wouldn't kill him or do away with him in order to keep the throne. So when Jason grew up, he came back and his uncle said, well, you got to prove that you're worthy to be the king once something happens to me. So he sent him on this quest. And he said, you have to get the golden fleece. Now that's a sheep with golden wool. And he said, okay. There was a problem with that. The golden fleece was guarded, and it was in Medea's father's kingdom, and they were barbarians. So when Jason got there, the gods immediately made Medea fall in love with him. And he fell overboard, and she saved him. And she said, what do you need? What do you want? I'll do anything you want. And he said, well, I need the golden fleece. She said, done. So she killed the guardian of the fleece. She was a witch. Okay, that should have been his first clue. But he went along with her anyway because she was passionately in love with him. So when they were escaping with the golden fleece, her brother was pursuing them. Well, she chopped him up into little pieces and threw his body in the ocean. And you remember the thing about they have to get the body and they have to put the money on the eyeballs so that they won't have to wander the underworld. So the people with Medea's brother stopped and tried to capture all the pieces that she had thrown in the water to take him back. So they escaped. And they went back to Jason's father's kingdom. And Jason's father was very sick. That's why his brother took over the kingdom. And Medea said, I'll make you a potion. So she did, and he was immediately healed. And his brother said, you know what, I want a potion like that too. And she told his daughters, well, this is what you need to do. First of all, you need to slit his throat, and then we'll give him this potion. Well, what do you think happened when they slit his throat? Of course he died. So they were chasing Medea and Jason after that. So they settled in the kingdom where they are presently. And in the present kingdom, Jason has decided he wants to marry the princess. And that is where our story begins on page 744. How would you describe Medea's state at the beginning of this story? What do you mean? Can you tell us what? Okay, what is she specifically doing?
Well, I mean, at the very beginning, she's just living her life, just proclaiming about how she hates her kids. And
How she wants to kill herself and she wants to die. This is the worst thing that ever happened to me. She is in a depressed state. And on page 746, the nurse is talking. And she says about Medea, she calls the gods to witness how Jason has repaid her for all these things that she did for Jason. She won't touch food, surrendering to pain. She melts away her days in tears ever since she learned of this injustice. She won't raise her face. Her eyes are glued to the ground. Friends talk to her and try to give her advice. She won't listen. She hates her children. She feels no joy in seeing them. This is not good. And then on page 751, she makes this speech about the plight of women. And that is the question, I believe it is question number 5. What is she saying in this speech about the plight of women? Who's got question number 5? Which group has that? Okay?
Well, she talks about like how women are just women are very undervalued, and how that people like Jason, like men like Jason, don't value them at all. Like just because like he had cheated on her and just like done all this stuff, like he clearly just didn't care about anything. Like he was just very manipulative.
Okay, on page 751, line 229, can you show us where that's coming from? Can you show us some lines there about what she's saying about women? Somebody in the group, it doesn't have to be you.
Which one?
It starts on line 729, 229.
Calls Jason with everything he needs, and then he's now the worst of him.
Okay, and then she goes on to say why. What does she say about what's happened to her?
You have to buy a husband, have a wife, buy a husband, didn't ask enough money. She didn't ask enough for her body, and then it's all injury.
Yeah. We have to get it. We have to do everything we can to get a husband. And she says at the bottom of 751, if we do well, and if our husbands bear the yoke without discomfort or complaint, our lives aren't mine. Oh, you lucky girl. But if not, it's best to die. She says a man, when he gets tired of a woman, he can leave her. But if she does the same, her reputation is ruined. So what is the relationship? What's happening here? What is she telling us about poor women? They have no power. They have nothing without a man. So here she is, a foreigner in this country. She's killed her family, her brother, so she can't go back home. She has nothing. She has nothing left. So she's lamenting this on page 752, and Creon the king comes, and he says, you've got to go. You've got to get out of here. What is his concern, and what is Jason's concern about the plight of women? And that's what question 5 is asking.
Leon and Jason had talked earlier, those two together were to deal with that picture. He was like, hey Jason, I gotta you about marrying one of your daughters here. So, just jerking at Leon.
Exactly. They don't care about the plight of women. As long as they're happy, so what? You're just a woman. I can get another one. You are dispensable. You are not valued at all. So we see this being played out. So we see on page 752 that Creon comes back to her and he says, you've got to get out of town. There are 3 reasons that I want you to leave. First of all, I'm afraid of you. You said you're going to kill my daughter, and I'm afraid of that. He says on 753, you're wise by nature. You're a very clever woman, which I don't like. Women shouldn't be clever. Number 2, you're a witch. So I better be scared of that. And number 3, you're upset because your husband's gone and you're going to get revenge. So you got to go. So she begs him. She gets in that supplicant position and begs him to let her stay just one more day. She said, I'll straighten everything out, get my kids taken care of, and I'll leave. And he says, okay. And on page 754, she says, that's not how this is going to end. And she says, I'm going to destroy these people. So Jason comes to see her. And he says, look what you've done. You've made trouble for yourself. If you just stayed here, everything would have been fine. And he gives her this argument. She says, but Jason, I saved your life. And he said, not really, it was the God's doings. They're the ones that put you there and made you fall in love with me so you'd save my life. And so who can argue with the God's will? So then she says, I slew the guardian of the fleece for you. He said, yeah, and you lived in a barbaric home, so after you did that, I said, oh, come on and come with me. So I provided a home for you. So he twists every action to make it sound like he's doing the good thing here, not her. And then she says, but Jason, I left my home. I can't go back. And I caused your uncle to die. So we can't go back there either. And he says, yeah, but I provided a civilized home for you to build up your reputation. And again, he makes every action look like he's to be credited for doing something good rather than something bad. And then her very last plea is, Jason, I did it all for you. Now, guys, if you ever break up with somebody, do not tell your girlfriend this. He said, but sugar, my marriage to the princess will make all our lives better. Now, that was just totally not reasonable. And that just put her over the edge. And she said, well, what am I going to do? He says, I don't care. I will find a place for you to go. I'll keep the children. And she said, I don't want my children to be beggars. They should be princes, and I don't want them not to get what they deserve. And he says, well, best I can tell you, I'll give you some money and help you out. And then he leaves. And she says, well, look here. And on page 772, she's going back and forth. I can't do it, I must do it. I can't do it, I must do it. So then, of course, she sends a gift to Jason's new bride. What is the gift?
The robe.
What about the robe?
It's like, it has stitching that's like drugs that she poisons.
Yeah, she poisons her. She puts it on and says, oh, this is great. And then she starts kind of melting. And her father says, oh, my precious daughter. And he grabs her. Then he tries to get away from her, and he's stuck to her. And they just kind of melt there together. And that's where the critics say, oh, that's kind of melodramatic. I thought it was kind of awesome that she's got fire coming out of her head and she's melting with her father. And then, in the meantime, while all that's going on, she's with the children on page 778. And the child says, stop her! We're trapped! We're caught! The sword is at our throats! So how does she kill them? With a sword. Yeah. She kills her children with a sword. And then Jason comes and says, I wish that I didn't have to have women for anything. Y'all are like a disease. And she says, well, you got us anyway. And on page 780, he says, and this is important because this is going to be a test question. Oh, children, you were cursed with an evil mother. Is he right?
Yes, sir.
But she says, oh, sons, you were destroyed by your father's sickness. Is she right? I hear two different things, so we're going to talk about that in just a minute. So then, what happens to her at the very end? That is question number 7. Who's got that one? What happens to her at the end?
She goes around a chariot with the kids.
Yeah, she flies away and gets away with murder. It says on page 781, and Zeus on Olympus enforces all things. The gods can accomplish what no one would hope for. What we expect may not happen at all, while the gods find a way against all expectation to do what they want, however surprising, and that is exactly how this case turned out. Her grandfather, the sun god, provided a chariot for her to escape the end. Okay, so what is the significance in this play of vengeful acts? Who's got question number 1? I think Cameron, your group. What's the significance of those vengeful acts?
Actually, I thought we had Jason's denial.
Okay, y'all got vengeful acts. Sorry.
The vengeful act was Medea getting back at Jason and killing the kids. Not letting him stay like a
Okay. Why was she committing this horrible act?
That's all the race built up.
And what was she specifically mad about? He did leave her, but what was so painful about it to her? He just tossed her aside like a Kleenex. Okay, so the next question, was he responsible at all? Did he have any responsibility? What is the significance of his denial of responsibility?
Well, in denying his responsibility to his family, put her into this state of madness and depression. So he is partially responsible for how this turned out, and he should have to take responsibility for it. At the same time, that doesn't mean he was any less wrong for what she did. They both need to take that.
Okay.
responsibility for that.
All right. So, is there any justification for what she did? They both are responsible. They both have some responsibility here. So does she have any justification for what she did? Is that Charles? Jacob? No. Who's that?
You want the...
No.
Okay.
Who's supposed to say no? Okay.
Lisa, no, she took something away that wasn't just hers, but her husband's by killing the 2 kids and he killed her.
Well, I mean, murdering your children is kind of unnatural because what is supposed to be the strongest bond of all? Mother and child, yeah. So she does this totally unnatural thing. And no matter what, she shouldn't have killed him. Except, yeah, so here these children are, they're supposed to be royalty. And they're basically turned into homeless beggars. And Jason said, oh, I'll take them and I'll raise them. But then they're going to be like Cinderella, the stepchildren. So she said, my children are not going to have that life. They're not going to live a life that they're always dependent on someone else, being underneath someone else's decision making, oppressed. So she says, I'm going to kill them. Okay, so then we have this question about her being a proud and clever woman. It has even been said that her cleverness led to her suffering. Is she a clever woman, and should she be admired for what she did? That's question number 4. Who's got that one? Which one do y'all have, Jacob? I mean, yes, which one do y'all have? Jacob's already answered yours, haven't you? No? Y'all had 3? Okay. So y'all must have 4?
I know we had 3 because of the water actions.
Yeah, we just need to we would know.
Okay. All right. So nobody has number 4. Proud and clever woman. Should she be admired? Why? Okay, she's out of her mind, but she did formulate a plan. She did formulate a plan and say, you know, you're going to make me leave. I've lost everything. I don't even have a place to go, but I'm going to get one more day here, and I'm going to work this out. So as out of her mind as she was, she did devise a plan that would at least save her. What?
First degree. And she was planning on just being vindictive or just going.
I'm not going to take it anymore. What happens when people are pushed to the limit? They have nothing left to lose. They snap. They fight back. They have everything, nothing to lose and everything to gain, so they fight back. Number 6. Sophocles said that Euripides drew men as they are. He wrote about the dark side of people the way we really are, not as they ought to be. Do you agree or disagree? 6. Who's got that one? Explain.
We agree because that's how people want people to see how they really act, how they are during that time, how they really act instead of how they should.
Yeah. All of these people in this play were selfish. Nobody was really thinking about outside of themselves. And isn't that the way human nature really does work a lot of times? We are self-centered and it's all about me. So that's what he was showing here. Okay, both sides are at fault by not assuming responsibility and by taking actions that are kind of horrible. But it's all about self-preservation. It's about protecting themselves, and that's how people normally act. So what is the significance of the Deus Ex Machina? That is question number 1. D-U-E-S E-X M-A-C-H-I-N-A. Deus Ex Machina. It means the machine of the gods. And it is a miracle saving. And in Greek theater, it actually was a device that came down from the top of the stage and saved people, like the chariot. And it is a device that is still used in movies and stories today. Do y'all remember that movie Dodgeball? Y'all ever seen that? You know that guy carried around that trunk that said Deus Ex Machina, a miracle saving? And in Star Wars, I don't remember which one it is. It's the one where Luke and Leia and Han are in the garbage compactor and it's about to kill him and it's a miracle, it stopped. Okay, Deus Ex Machina occurs still in works. So this was one of the first uses of it. Alright, so what was the story about? Why did Sophocles use a woman? Remember, not Sophocles, Euripides. Euripides was a voice for people who didn't have a voice.
You like showed how much feeling was in a woman and how her feelings matter too, and how important to women like things are when they act like they didn't really deserve to care about stuff.
Kind of. Alright, the story Medea and the story Lysistrata. This is a test question. Both have women as the main characters. What are the author's purposes in using women as the main characters? And they are not the same. Neither one of them is about empowering women, I can tell you that. So do not even think about writing that on your test question because it is not accurate. Okay, what did Euripides use Medea to symbolize? What group? Oppressed people. He used her to represent all oppressed people. Women, slaves, and foreigners. Okay, she was a symbol. What did Lysistrata represent? Why did Aristophanes use her? What was she in the play? And what was she? She was, but what does she represent? Who is she in the play? Euripides used Medea to symbolize oppressed women or oppressed people. Who was Aristophanes using her to represent? Who could see this? Who could see that war is bad and needed to end? Not everybody, because they kept fighting. Women. And how were women viewed? No sense. Women are stupid. And they're objects. Okay? So we have two different reasons. Euripides is using Lysistrata to represent what he thought women were. Objects that didn't have much sense. That's Aristophanes. Euripides is using Medea as to represent oppressed people. And his goal is to show that oppression is destructive. What was Aristophanes' goal? What did he want this play to do? Stop the war. And the theme of this play, Medea, Euripides wanted to show that when people are oppressed and they have nothing to lose, what will they do? Yes. And what are the results of that? They're bad. They're destructive. It is not a good thing when that happens. Alright, so what was Aristophanes' theme? Okay, Lysistrata represented women. He wanted to end the war. So what was his theme? If women Yes, if women can recognize that war uses valuable resources of people and money, then surely the men could see that and end the war.